Hello and welcome to another episode of the BashTalk podcast. Today it was a last minute arrangement, but I've actually got the one and only Councillor Iqbal on today, and I thought I'll invite him on just because Ramadan's coming and the election cycle and campaigning has just started as well, and I don't plan to do any podcasting in that time, so by the time Ramadan's over it's nearly election time, so I thought perfect time. Let's get Councillor Iqbal to quickly come on and we can just chat about stuff around the election strategy, the opposition, and stuff like that. But yeah, Councillor Iqbal, if you can just fire off and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, Bash, and to all your viewers. And as usual, it's a pleasure to get a phone call from you to appear, even if it's last minute and before us here as well. So the pleasure's all mine. But yeah, you're right. Obviously, Ramzan's coming up and election is in full swing at the moment on a local level. A number of issues and a number of topics that have been raised on the doorstep with me and my colleagues. And inshallah, we're looking forward to election day. Whereas last year it was during the month of Ramadan. This year, I think we're blessed that we'll have celebrated Eid a couple of days earlier. So all fully refreshed and stocked, ready for election day for the big battle.
Cool. And then one thing I did propose with Councillor Iqbal is we did recently, I mean, obviously Councillor Iqbal is from the Labour Party. Now, we did recently get a Tory leaflet that came through the door. So I thought it'd be worth just going through some of the claims made and saying, what do you reckon?
Absolutely.
It's only fair because in the day, if you're going to post it through my letterbox, then it should stand up to scrutiny, shouldn't it?
Indeed, it should.
Yeah, so more police. 276 extra police officers already recruited. Big claims. Apparently they're very tough on policing.
Well, amazing. And, I don't need to tell people that since 2010, the number of police officers that have disappeared from our streets across the country, we've lost over 20,000 police officers. In Lancashire alone, we've lost over 800. So, my Conservative colleagues are saying that they've recruited 276. Well, if you've taken 800 out and you've recruited 276, that still leaves about, by my maths, 524 simply to get back to where we were 12 years ago. And policing is a big issue. The community needs to be protected, needs to be kept safe. And, I have colleagues who are within the police force, who work in the police force, have family members who work in the police force. And I don't need to tell people how tough it is. At the moment, if somebody rings for an ambulance or a police officer, I'll give you an example. Somebody rang the police because their car had been broken into. It took 36 hours for the police to come out, simply because there isn't the resources there. So it's all good and well making the claims, but I don't think people are silly enough to be fooled by what the Conservatives are saying. And it's not just on a local level, on a national level, the cost of living crisis that's going on. Last time I came on, we were talking about COVID, Bash. 150,000 people died in this country.
Yeah.
And yet we've got a Prime Minister and his mates who were busy partying at our expense. I remember, you remember, on the last minute when Eid was cancelled, the night before Eid, we were told you can't celebrate Eid, but it was good enough for the government and their mates to be partying in Downing Street. So it's one rule for them and one for us is the way that I see it.
It is disgraceful.
It's shocking, and I lost a family member. My grandmother died during COVID, and it was really heartbreaking, heart-wrenching that for only 10 of us to be at her funeral, and things like that, and not being able to celebrate Eid, not being able to see your loved ones, it's something that lives with you for the rest of your life. And when you see those at the top of government, having these so-called work meetings at our expense in their time on our money, really does stick it in the throat when people say people are fed up with politics.
Yeah, and I think at this point I just want to emphasise that for those of you who are younger and not in tune with politics, the ones in power are the Conservative Party, which is the peeps that dropped this leaflet off, which is why you raised that point as well.
And one of the points was, I was leader of the council for 5 years, and at every election time and outside of election time, I would stand on what my record was as leader of the council. The Conservatives are in power, have been in power now for the last 12 months in Pendle, and I would have expected as a resident for them to say, look, this is what we've done in Pendle, this is what we're doing for the community. And unfortunately, they choose a national headline which says we're recruiting 276 more police officers. I mean, if 276 police officers are coming in Pendle, fantastic, I'm over the moon. But if people read the literature that's coming through the door and then challenge those politicians that put it, my party are putting out leaflets, and I would challenge people to challenge us on the doorstep or contact us and say, you're making this claim, back it up with evidence.
Yeah.
It's all good and well putting pen to paper. It's not the tabloid press people are reading. It's actual leaflets, and people want to vote for somebody who will stand up for them.
No, I completely agree. And what's this? To be honest, I've not even read it myself. What's this Yes Hub? Do you know anything about this?
Yeah, I mean, the Yes Hub is there for young people. I mean, when I was growing up, which is quite a while before you were growing up, we used to have the career service in school who used to give you advice on what jobs to go into. Then you had connections and other various programs.
Yeah, I
They all
remember that.
disappeared as part of the 2010 cuts that have happened. And a lot of young people now are alienated. They, when they leave school, generally don't know which way to turn. And the Yes Hub is something that's been worked out with the youth service, with the college. But for one party to try and take commitment for that or the credit,
Yeah.
I think is wrong. The proof is in the pudding. When young people start to get jobs in this area, then you can say that Yes Hub has been a success.
Okay. I noticed this leaflet. It's got COVID-19 restrictions on. Look, I'm going to be honest with you, Tory guys that are watching this. Some of you guys, I know you personally, love you to bits, top guys, but you should really be embarrassed putting this COVID-19 restrictions section in this. You shouldn't even put it in. It's just a disgrace. I mean, look at what Boris did. This is just embarrassing. So I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible, but this is just embarrassing.
Yeah.
So what about this? A new deal for Lancashire. New deal? Deliver a bold vision for the county council, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Any ideas what it's about?
Well, that's something that's been on the agenda for a long time. I mean, Pendle Council represents Pendle. Every other council represents each other area, and the government have now come up for the umpteenth time a new scheme where they think they can roll out a new level of democracy. I mean, my belief, and I've always argued this, is that I can represent the people that I represent from the council that I live in. There's no point in me having one super council for the whole of Lancashire because services will be alienated as they are. If I see a pothole now, and there's plenty of them at the moment, I know where to report it. But if as a local resident you think the only place to report it is in Blackburn or Preston, it's a million miles away for people that don't have access to the internet and stuff. So this deal, yet another new deal for Lancashire, is just, at the moment, it's hot air. There's nothing being agreed by any council leader, nothing being agreed, but what's the deal that benefits people locally is what I want to know. And the government at the moment have said nothing. When I was leader of the council, I argued with government to say, fine, give us a fair funding deal to spend in our areas and we'll look at it. But the reality is that all they want to do is pass down more cuts to local levels, and it's not on.
No, again, thank you for explaining that, because ultimately, obviously, any election material, they've got to put the spin on it, and I understand that. And likewise, obviously, there's going to be Labour material that I might look at, I might question.
Absolutely.
And I have to be fair.
Absolutely.
So when some comes through my door, I might have to grab some from the Tory party, and likewise. But, Nelson Cone College won some kind of £120 million competition or something. Establish the next wave of innovative new institutes across the country. I don't know.
Yeah, these are simply, I think, it's a case of trying to, how much news can we fill? With
Yeah,
it?
I don't.
They may as well start talking about the weather or what's going on in other parts of the world.
I don't get the Tory connection to this. Like, what did they do? They didn't do anything. There's nothing.
Well, they didn't, and that's why I've challenged my Conservative colleagues. And you're right, some of them are nice people, even though they're Conservatives. But what I say to them is in council meetings is, look, stand up for what you've done or what you believe in, not what we're getting from Tory Central Office or Labour Central Office. I mean, you look at our leaflets, they will have nothing that's a standard central type story that resonates in Pendle, that resonates in Burnley, that resonates in Accrington.
Yep.
Our stories are localised because if you elect a local councillor on a local level, you want to hear what they're going to do for you, not what Boris Johnson is doing or not doing in this case.
Yep. So now that we've got that super interesting leaflet out of the way, for us at a local level, so let's talk Nelson, Pendle, what have you got in mind? What's your target in terms of areas you want to work on? Not necessarily election strategy, because that's obviously within, is your own thing, but in terms of just let the people know what's going on, what do you want to do?
So my view is that, and I'll use 3 or 4 examples, that this election is going to be fought on what's best for this area. And, I would say that over the last 12 months, the Conservatives have run Pendle Council. In reality, they've promised the earth but delivered dust. And I'll give 3 prime examples for that, Bash. So during the recent budget, we proposed that the Conservatives during the year had cut street cleaning. And I don't need to tell you that the level of street cleaning that is required is huge in some areas. So we said, look, we will reinstate that street cleaning cut that you've done, because there are people that generally litter our streets, and I think they should be fined.
Yeah.
But why should good, decent, law-abiding citizens suffer as a result of street cleaning cuts? So as part of this budget, we said reverse those cuts. Conservatives voted against that. The second thing is climate change is a big issue at the moment,
Yep,
and
100%.
on an international level. So the council has a climate budget working group, and we said let's give that climate changing working group more money to actually do something effective for the area. So, and an example of that is that most of the houses in this area were built in the 1900s. They're over 100 years old. In terms of energy efficiency, are very poor. But climate change is something that's affected, and I'll talk about the energy crisis in a second. The third thing that I found on the doorstep year after year, and unfortunately we had a recent incident within Nelson where there was a major car crash where a lot of people were injured. Speeding is a big issue. So we said as a Labour Party to the council meeting, look, we will give some money, and it was £45,000, but then we would seek match funding to the tune of £500,000, both from the county council, who are responsible for our highways, and the Police and Crime Commissioner, who's obviously responsible for reducing crime and increasing police, to tackle highway speeding. And my proposal was, that covers the area from the one end of Pendle to the other end of Pendle, to deal with the idiot drivers that have no regard for their own lives, but more importantly, have no regard for anybody else. And why should anybody suffer if the authorities can't crack down on that? And again, unfortunately, for some bizarre reason, Conservatives voted against that, and that's on the record because the meeting was live screened. People could see which people were voting, and there was no rationale as to why not. So those are three key things that have happened recently. But in terms of, for example, the energy crisis, I mean, I don't need to tell people what the cost of living crisis is doing. Last week the Chancellor in his spring budget and made this grand announcement to reduce petrol and diesel by 5p a litre. Well, I fill up every week. I've not seen any reduction in petrol, not seen any reduction in diesel. And from April, the cost of heating your home and the electric that obviously we're using today will rocket through the roof. And that's not fair on decent, law-abiding working people, because mine and yours wages haven't got up 50%. Well, certainly mine haven't. I don't know about yours.
Oh, definitely not mine either.
People's benefits have been cut. So the most vulnerable in our community are going to suffer. And, I was canvassing this weekend and I met an elderly gentleman that lived on his own in my ward, who was wrapped in a blanket when he opened the door. And you imagine this weekend it was nice and sunny. And I questioned him why, and he said, I can't afford to heat my home. And that really hurt me, because I thought, here's this gentleman who's given all his life to this country, and when it comes to his age of enjoying life, he can't afford to heat his own home. And that's not the way this country should be built. I'm meeting people on a daily basis who are making a choice that do they heat the home or do they put food on the table for the kids? And that's the stark choices that you would expect in a third world country, not in modern day Britain. So this election, in my opinion, is a clear choice for people that do we continue with more of the same under what we've had under the Conservatives, or, and I've said this to people, that give us an opportunity and we will prove ourselves within 12 months. If we don't, it'll kick us out after 12 months. But, the 5 years that I was leader of the council, we did a lot of good things, and those things are now coming to fruition that some other parties may want to take credit. But I believe people in this area, sensible people, and know what the right decision is. And the one thing that I always say to people is that you need to elect people who will speak up for you. And I'm proud that the team that I've got from within the Labour Party, within the council, and those candidates that we're standing across the patch this year that are young, middle-aged like me, slightly older than me, male and female, are going to be fantastic councillors who the community will be proud of that they've elected. Not people who simply go to the council and just stick the hand up. I don't want that type of politics.
No, I like the sound of that you've considered like a broad spectrum of kind of candidates.
Yeah, and I'll give you an example that there's always been underrepresentation of women in this area. Alhamdulillah, and I'll give her a shout out. Ruby Anwar, who was elected last year, is a fantastic councillor. She really is a shining model for young professional women in this area. And Ruby has really rolled her sleeves up and got stuck into things. And, she's one for the future. I'm currently leader of the Labour Party. I'm leader of the council. I'd be blessed if somebody like Ruby would come forward and take the mantle off me, because, I want the barriers to be pushed. Well, the only way the barriers will be pushed is if the community put those people there in the first place that are capable, rather than saying, he's from the same village as me, or he speaks good outside the council, it promises the earth but does nothing. Those politics are long gone. We need to be electing young professional people from this country who can stand up and argue for what we deserve.
So, Actually, one small thing, and it's just, regarding the kind of speeding thing. The one thing I'd probably say, and this is based on my own experience, I think one thing I'd probably just, speaking as a civilian, like just purely, like when you're kind of considering what you're doing in front of enforcement action and your enforcement measures, I'd probably just say that I don't think the answer is necessarily traffic calming measures.
No.
Yeah, because I'll be honest with you, I hate speed cameras. I hate the enforcement system. I'm not like a consistent speeder. You've seen me drive around. I don't drive around like an idiot. Just an old BMW. But at the same time, I think having more kind of police presence and being around to actually catch the people that are driving like idiots is probably would work out better than more cameras or average speed cameras and stuff like that. I'm really
Absolutely,
not a
I
fan
agree
of
with
them.
that. I mean, I live on a main road, and most people know where I live, and it's amazing that every so often when we have the speed camera van located, that as soon as they see that van, they slam the brakes on, and it's a deterrent. Whether they get fined or not is a separate thing, but the number of people that drive past my house and then suddenly slam the brakes on when they see either a speed camera or a speed enforcement vehicle is amazing. But I think there's more to be done in terms of education within secondary schools because, I'm chair of governors at a local secondary school, and we've had issues recently where our pupils under the age of 16 have been caught joyriding. Now, they've been using the parents' cars. How they got those keys is beyond me. But there's an education process, and I think the education process needs to start young to say to young children, look, speed does kill. How many young people have we lost in this area as a result of speeding? And the heart of the community goes out when that young boy or girl dies, but the next day they're back on it again.
Yeah.
And that's wrong. you know if there's an accident and somebody innocent is killed, I couldn't live with myself my whole life realizing what I'd done.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the community at large sometimes needs to stand up as a community and say to these young people who are speeding or who are driving flash cars, thinking that it's okay to drive at 80 miles an hour on a 30 miles per hour road. The community at large needs to stand up and say, what you're doing is wrong. And I think that's the way to educate young people. Rather than using the stick approach, there needs to be the carrot as well.
I think a little bit of it is, what? Yeah, it's going to sound like I'll be honest, I'm going to make a broad statement. It's not accurate for all cases, but I think one of the problems is that younger lads have got access to finance. They're living like everything's made for them at home.
Yeah.
They've got no expenses and they're all getting Golf Rs and RS3s. They're paying the monthly finances off, and those are powerful cars, man.
Yeah.
Like you see them driving around like maniacs, and you're kind of thinking to yourself, like, you haven't even like progressed from like a small low-powered car and kind of worked your way upwards, and they're just all over the place.
There's not that step up. I mean, if you give a 17-year-old kid, and I call him a kid, like you say, a supercharged car, of course they're going to think that's the thrill of the world.
Yeah.
But if like the likes of me, you've built up progressively, not that I'm blessed with a super turbocharged car, not that I'd sit in one at my age now, but the appeal wears off.
Yeah.
But I think there's some parental responsibility that has to be taken care of here.
Yeah.
If at 17, my son or daughter says, look, I want a BMW that's fully souped up or a Golf GTI, then maybe as a parent I need to think, what, at 17, do they really deserve that car? Do they need to focus on other things in life first and then enjoy the cars? Because there's no point in getting them a car at 17 and seeing them dead at 18. And we've seen too many of those cases.
Yeah. Although I get it, I've been young. I'm still young.
You're a lot younger than me, so
Yeah. How old are you now? 40. Right.
just add a bit more on.
So moving from the topic of cars, and we've talked about the areas that you want to focus on for elections this year. What's happening? Because I know we mentioned a new deal, but what was happening there was this big community grant thing that was supposed to happen. We're talking millions.
There's a £25 million for Nelson. We spoke about that last time I was on.
Yeah.
So there's no £25 million that's come yet. Naturally, what tends to happen is the government make these grand announcements, and then councils have to develop business plans and grand ideas.
Yep.
Unfortunately, over the last 12 months, government announced Nelson as one of those towns.
Yep.
So the council was tasked to formulate a town deal board. And the town deal board is frustrated. I'm vice chairman of the town deal board. We are frustrated with the council at the slow apparent progress. And at the last meeting, much to my annoyance, there was an agreement that we asked the government for yet another extension of another year to try and formulate a business plan. Now, that ship is moving slowly away, and if we're not careful, at some point government will say, you know what, if you can't get your act together, then I'm sorry, that 25 million quid's gone. And 25 million pounds sounds a lot of money, Bash, but when you try and deal with some of the issues that we've got in the town, it's a drop in the ocean. But as a council or as a council leader, he or she's responsibility is to grab the bull by its horns and make sure that we maximise that 25 million and try and get extra out to the government or anybody else that wants to give us money. What we shouldn't be doing is asking for extensions simply because we haven't got our house in order. And one of the things that I'm committed to, that if I'm re-elected as leader of the council in May, inshallah, that'll be one of the things that I will really grab by the horns, because I live in this town, I'm proud of this town, and if money's coming to this town, I want to make damn sure that it's spent in this town. I don't want it sat somewhere in Whitehall or for Boris Johnson to have parties on it.
Oh, you know what Nelson should have done? Nelson Town Council should have set up like a little umbrella company and just said, "Oh, we'll make PPE," and then suddenly we would have had billions.
We could have, we missed a trick there, didn't we?
Yeah, well, the Tories should have found a way, wouldn't they? But right. So the other area I wanted to touch on, just a real quick one, because it was a certain somebody, surnamed Zaman, a very good mutual friend of ours. He wanted to ask
Local
about
celebrity.
local celebrity. Yeah. He's recently moved into the town. He had a question about a new inductee to the Labour Party. Who is it?
Councillor Muhammad Adnan.
Not yet. Hamdan. That's the one. And he's wondering what were his reasons for moving and his motivations for coming to Labour and
Well,
stuff.
Adnan is a, mashallah, young, talented individual who joined the council last year, who was elected as a Conservative in the ward that he represents. But clearly he was unhappy where he was because he couldn't see that vision, that inspiration that he was looking for as a young person to take the area that he represents forward. And I think he'd become disillusioned not only with local politics, but with the national direction that the government was taking. And, we've touched on in terms of Boris Johnson and his antics, but I think what really hammered the message home for him, that the Conservative Party wasn't the party for him, was the cost of living crisis. He was seeing day in, day out as a council member what effect the decisions of government were having. And he made an approach to the Labour Party. I had conversations with him, and I'm pleased that last week he left the Conservatives and has joined the Labour Party. And I think he's somebody who, nurtured correctly, will be another talent for the future, because he's a young individual who's got a lifetime of politics ahead of him.
Yep.
I joined politics when I was his age. I've done 25 years. Adnan, I think, is somebody who will benefit his community, but from the Labour Party platform, he will actually get things done. But in order to get things done, we need control back of the council, which I'm hoping to get back in May. And then I will allow people like Adnan and others across the political spectrum, if they want to do good for their community, they have my support. But what I won't allow is pure party politics, whether it's based on English politics or traditional Pakistani type of politics, that, we don't like Iqbal, therefore we disagree with everything that he does.
Yeah.
We need to think broader now.
And then, actually, you've got quite a few young people. You've got like Councillor Atiq and Sufi as well.
I feel old when I see some of the youngsters that are in our party and the professionals that are in our party. I generally feel old, but I'm proud that they look up to me as an experienced role peer mentor. But I've said to them that, look, use me and take my knowledge away from me, my experience away from me, and use it for your benefit. So alhamdulillah, we appeal to the youngsters in the community, and they've come in forward, because it's a thankless task being in politics. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, I bet.
You do something good, somebody may thank you. You do something bad, everybody's onto your case. But if you do something good, what I say to the youngsters is that, look, use that as a stepping model to the next task that you want to do. Don't think I've helped one person and that's it for 4 years.
Yeah.
And we keep saying to residents, push the boundaries against us, challenge us all the time. Don't just sit back and say, look, Iqbal, you're the councillor, therefore that's it, you've got a God-given right for the rest of your life. When I stand up for election, I want to challenge, I want to debate my political opponents, but unfortunately for some reason they don't want to debate me. Fine, that's up to them. But, I'm proud of the record that I've got over 23 years. I'm proud of my Labour Party colleagues that are standing this year. And I'd urge people to consider, of course you would say, Bash, that why would I say vote for the Labour Party? But all I'd say to people is vote for the right person who you think will represent you. And if that's the Labour Party, I'm pleased. If it's not, I'm still pleased, but I want people to make the right choice.
Fair enough. No, that's fair enough. And then one last thing, just some of that, it bugs me because it happens year round. And that's basically, when, let's say you get someone that's voting, whether Labour, Lib Dems, they don't really exist in this area, but or Tory, whoever. And one of the problems is like when I'm trying to speak to a Tory, or well, a supporter as an example, and I'm saying to them, look, surely you've seen what Boris Johnson's done, and it's that same argument that I get hit with, and we talked about it last time as well, where they'll say, well, oh, that's down in London, it doesn't affect us here. Whereas I'm trying to say that, look, I'm not a Labour Party campaigner here. I'm not trying to tell you you have to vote Labour, but surely you've got to understand that those guys down in London are looting the place literally, and it's the same party that you're voting for. You're basically doing your own self in here. Like, what don't you understand? Is it a case of maybe you need to do something specifically in Punjabi or Urdu and say to us, like, look, this is how the process works. This is who you're voting for. Because I think you guys might be missing a trick there, maybe. Or it's just they're just voting for the Tory mates. I don't know. Can't do anything about
I
it.
think the issue is, though, that, and I'll give you an example. It's a long time ago, maybe when you were a lot younger, but the Iraq War, the inference is that Tony Blair took the country to the war. He did because he was Prime Minister. The fact that 141 Labour MPs voted against their own government, and at the time the Conservatives carried the vote through, is a separate issue. But I was one of the councillors on a local level here in Pendle who publicly said that what Tony Blair did was wrong, and it shouldn't be in my name. Now, the fact is that whichever government's in power in London has a direct impact on every single decision that's made on a local level, because the funding issue is one thing. National government gives the local council the funding to decide where to spend the money. But if Boris Johnson is doing something wrong, I would expect, and I'm leader of the Labour Party, but if my government was in power and Keir Starmer or Jeremy Corbyn were doing something wrong, I would be the first one to stand up and say, you're doing something wrong here. And I would have expected local Conservative members or local Conservative councillors or even the Member of Parliament to stand up and say, look, hundreds of people died in this area during the pandemic. We obeyed the rules. You obeyed the rules. I obeyed the rules. Everybody else obeyed the rules.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with Boris Johnson obeying the rules? But we didn't hear a little peep out of them on a local level. And when pushed, they said the same thing that they say to you. Well, it's Boris Johnson. He's the Prime Minister of the country. Well, he is, but he should be challenged at every opportunity. And what really sticks in my throat is that he was up in Blackpool last weekend, and you had Pendle Conservative members that live in this area happily having pictures with him in Blackpool as though he was the best.
I didn't know about this.
I'll show you sometime, but
yeah, please.
But they were happily having pictures with him in Blackpool as though he was the best friend since sliced bread.
It's embarrassing.
And that's wrong. If you find he's the Prime Minister of the country, he was democratically elected, fine, have your picture with him, but at the same time, tell him what he's doing wrong. And that's where local politics breaks down, that when we think we should simply not attack our own government. Like I said, if the Labour Party was doing something wrong, I'm the first one to criticise, and I've been a Labour Party member all my life. But I'm disappointed on the local Conservatives, especially within Pendle. They had the opportunity to speak up and against what the government were doing, but chose to keep silent. Maybe, who knows, they were being invited to these secret parties in Downing Street. So we'll find out if any one of the local Conservatives got one of those 20 fines that are handed out by the police, then we'll know.
Yeah, well, no, I'm happy you mentioned the Blackpool thing. If you can just show me some stuff after the podcast.
I'll show you straight after the podcast.
I'm gonna be asking some tough questions if any of them ever turn up, because that's just bad, man.
It is, and that's what sticks in people's throats. So when I knock on the doorstep and people say you're all the same, well, of course they would, because they don't see anybody locally attacking what Boris Johnson and others are doing. I do it on a regular basis, and my Conservative colleagues say, well, you're opposition. Yeah, fine, I'm opposition, I get that, but where there's an injustice being done, I'll say that it's wrong. And another example is over the Ukraine crisis that's happened recently, and I feel for the Ukrainian people that what Putin is doing is wrong. But my government, our British government, has these double standards. And I spoke about this in the council meeting last week, and so did one of my other colleagues, that, for example, the Kashmiri people have been in lockdown now for 3 whole years, literally been under house arrest by the Indian government. Do I see our government here in Britain imposing sanctions on the Indians? No. So when it comes to Yemen, Palestine, other conflicts around the world, we choose to keep silent. But yeah, our foreign secretary here was saying, if I or you as British citizens want to go and fight out in Ukraine, we'll be regarded as war heroes. It's the double standards that really upset people on a local level. And when they say you're all the same, well, I'm sorry to say we're not all the same. There are certain people in politics who will have these double standards, but it's our duty, or my duty as a councillor as a Labour Party politician to speak out against those injustices. And if that upsets other people, you know what, I don't really care.
I think just to kind of round things off, I will say that I'm a little bit disappointed with what you mentioned about the Blackpool thing, purely because if you're one of the local Tories, and I'm assuming that these people were some of the Asian lot, yeah?
They were.
Yeah. So if it's some of the Asian lot, especially, considering we're from such a deprived area and stuff, I would have thought that they would have at least maybe gone up and publicly at least maybe put a status up to say, you know, I did have a conversation about your concerns about the following, because that's a huge platform to have.
Well,
You know, you've got access to
I'll
the
show
Prime
you the
Minister.
photo, Bash, and all the photo shows is Boris Johnson, 3 or 4 local prominent Conservatives stood there with a thumb up next to him.
Those are coming. I'm just going to be nice. I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to say anything bad. They're my dad's friends. Respect, uncles. I love you all. Just don't talk to me about this, otherwise you're going to get caned.
Well, you know, fine if they have the thumbs up, and if Boris has got his thumbs up as well, that's fine by me. But if they then send something out, you know what, we said to Boris, what you're doing is wrong in Pendle, and he said,
That's
yeah,
it.
thumbs up, I agree. Then fine, okay, I could accept that. But simply
yeah.
to say, yeah, we're really happy that we're having our photos with the Prime Minister. You know, if you want a photo with the Prime Minister, you can have a photo with the Prime Minister, but don't do it in my name.
Yeah, you're representing Nelson here, mate. But yeah.
And, you know, he must have thought, what a bunch of mugs these are. That they're not here to speak to me about something, they simply want a thumbs up photo opportunity, as though to say, Boris, what you're doing is a great job, mate.
I don't know what to say. I'm fresh out of words on this one, but
And that's
again,
rare, isn't it?
yeah, no, I think the one thing I will say is, look, I understand when you're going to watch this afterwards that ultimately I've got a bias, so I'm not particularly pro-Tory person. But if any of you guys want to come on, you're more than welcome to. I'll give you a platform and I will be fair. I'm not going to sit here and just grill you, so you're more than welcome to come on. But preferably after Rosé. But if you want to make it happen, I'll make it happen in Rosé. But I'm going to be too busy thinking about food.
What I'd really like is a one-to-one debate with a Conservative colleague, and you know, I'll use this platform to openly challenge whoever it is, whether it's the MP, the leader of the council, the leader of the local community Conservatives. Happy to have a one-to-one debate purely on policy, not personality politics, purely on what they stand for and what I stand for, and let the viewers be the judge.
Yeah, because me and Councillor Iqbal were having a conversation before the podcast started where, depending on how Ramadan's going, I'd like to maybe take like a room out at maybe the A Centre or somewhere and set up like a live stream, like a live version of the podcast, set up the mics and just invite all the parties over and say, right, round table, let's shoot. So if you guys are open to it, let me know. Maybe even leave some comments if you want to see like a big debate or anything. It's not about combativeness. It's not about anything about, oh, this guy has got this personality or anything. It's just about policy and what you can do for this town. Because if you're going to go around posting leaflets, and it applies to you as well,
Absolutely.
leaflets, campaigning, everything, then you got to be able to be held to account. So I'd love to have like a live Facebook feed with questions coming in and put these guys on and talk. So let me know what you guys think. And on that note, we're rounding off the time anyway. So, Councillor Iqbal, as ever, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
My pleasure's mine, Bash, and Ramzan Mubarak to everybody, and advance Eid Mubarak to everyone, unless Boris cancels it.
Yeah, I won't be surprised. Probably have his own party at the same time. And likewise, thanks for tuning in. And I know I come across as a bit harsh today, but we're talking about some serious money that's been, philandered. We're talking about restrictions that affected people's abilities to even, bury their loved ones or be present for funerals. And then we had that party that is in power for God knows how many years, having parties, and you've got the same people that represent those parties having the nerve to like pose with potholes and post leaflets expecting you to vote for them, and it's like, no, I don't think I will, thank you very much. So again, I'm trying not to be harsh, and I am biased, but it is what it is. But yeah, anyway, enough of my rambling. Peace out. Speak soon.